In the darkness of a luxurious office in Curitiba, Marcelo, a millionaire and CEO of one of the largest technology companies in Brazil, stares at the illuminated city through the window. In his pocket, the weight of a cruel decision. He has just abandoned his pregnant wife to marry the profit of business and the ambition for power. However, when he opens a letter that arrived unexpectedly, he discovers something that threatens to bring down his empire, and it will force him to confront everything he believed in. Curitiba, grey winter morning. Marcelo Gonçalves, 38 years old, is at the height of his professional success and is seen by everyone as a relentless and ambitious man. Owner of a technology company that has grown exponentially in recent years, he is feared and admired in equal measure. For Marcelo, everything comes down to a simple formula. Money and power are what move the world. Your hardened heart rarely allows room for feelings. Marcelo enters his luxurious apartment with firm steps and a cold look. His wife, Julia, a kind and dedicated young woman, is sitting on the sofa holding an ultrasound scan in her hands, visibly moved. Julia, in a soft and anxious voice, says, "Marcelo, you need to see. He is our son. Isn't that amazing?" She smiles, trying to share the joy with him. Marcelo, with a distant look and an impatient voice, says, "Julia, now is not the best time. I have an important meeting in half an hour." He takes off his tie without even looking at the exam. Julia, with a lot of disappointment in her eyes, says, "You never have time. You never think about us, Marcelo." She swallows hard but remains hopeful that he will change. Marcelo sighs and, without turning around, begins to speak coldly. "Marcelo, you know, Julia, I thought a lot about this, about us. My time and dedication are at work. You already knew that I never wanted a family. That was always your thing." He stops for a moment, looking out the window with disdain. Julia feels her heart tighten. She knew Marcelo was tough, but she never imagined he would go this far. Julia speaks in a trembling and choked voice. "Are you abandoning me right now?" Marcelo speaks decisively and without remorse. "Yes, I don't need distractions. The baby is your dream, not mine." While Marcelo leaves the house without looking back, Julia sits, alone and devastated. That same night, he receives an anonymous letter that will forever change the course of his life. Marcelo arrives at his office the next day, confident and certain that he made the right decision. On his desk, he finds a letter with no return address. He opens it, curious, and begins to read. The message, however, is much more than he expected. "Marcelo, unbridled ambition can cost everything. You won the company, but you lost what matters most. Take care of what is left, or what you have built will fall like sand. Someone is lurking, ready to take your place." Marcelo crumples the letter, irritated, thinking it is a banal threat. He ignores the warning and goes straight to the meeting with his executive team. However, during the meeting, unexpected news emerges. Assistant speaking with concern. "Marcelo, there are rumors that a new competitor is entering the market. It looks like he has plans to launch a technology that will go head-to-head with our main product." Marcelo, smiling disdainfully, says, "That's irrelevant. We have no real competitors in this sector. We are years ahead." But the assistant hesitates and decides to continue. Assistant speaks with a certain tension. "Actually, it seems that this company has detailed information about our product. customer data, features. They seem to know too much. Marcelo is silent for a moment, but then dismisses the threat. Marcelo with a commanding voice. I want a meeting with the directors. We need to reinforce our security and find out who these amateurs are. As he tries to maintain control of the situation, Marcelo begins to be tormented by memories of Julia and his merciless decision to abandon her. He can't shake the feeling that the letter and the problems at the company are somehow connected to this moment in his life. He's alone, poring over documents and reports, but his mind keeps returning to Julia and the baby. On impulse, he picks up the phone and dials the home number, but hesitates and hangs up before the call goes through. His expression shows a mixture of regret and pride. Marcelo begins to whisper to himself, I did the right thing. Nothing can stop me. However, the following weeks are a nightmare. The new rival company quickly gains ground and proves to be a real threat. Furthermore, Marcelo begins to receive more anonymous letters, each one exposing secrets and weaknesses in his company that only an insider would know. Marcelo is in a meeting with his main investors when he receives a new notification. The company's biggest client has just cancelled $1 million contract to sign with a competing company. He feels the ground disappear beneath his feet. For years, he has worked to build an impeccable image of success, but suddenly he is on the verge of collapse. The senior investor speaks with a threatening tone. Marcelo, we need answers. Our numbers dropped by half in a matter of weeks. This competitor is destroying our customer base, and you have done nothing so far to address it. Marcelo, trying to remain calm, says, we are taking all necessary measures. Our security has been reinforced, and we already have a team monitoring the competition. This will soon be resolved. But he senses the growing tension in the room. Shortly after the meeting, upon returning to the office, he finds another letter on his desk, this time with a more direct tone. People are not disposable parts, Marcelo. You made your choices, and now it's your turn to lose everything. Your company is just the beginning. As he reads the letter, his assistant Gabriela rushes in, interrupting his thoughts. Gabriela, with a tone of concern, says, Marcelo, I need you to know. I found documents about the new rival company. It seems that someone very close knows how we work. Marcelo, looking fixedly at Gabriela, says, who is behind this? Is it someone from our own team? Gabriela hesitantly and with a low voice, Marcelo, it's worse than that. The owner of this rival company is Julia. Marcelo feels the impact of Gabriela's words like a punch. He never imagined that the wife he abandoned months ago could fight back with such force. His voice shakes for the first time in years. Marcelo, speaking in a hoarse voice in disbelief, Julia, that's impossible. She was never interested in business. Gabriela, trying to choose her words, says, it seems like she got support from other investors. Your competitor, Marcelo, is not just a threat. He is someone who knows all your steps, your strategies, your secrets. The shock leads him to reflect on the devastation he caused in Julia's life by abandoning her and the child they would have. He realizes that his own pride and contempt have opened the door to this deadly rivalry. Lost in his memories, Marcelo remembers Julia holding the ultrasound and how he ignored her love to achieve success. For the first time, his pride gives way to regret, but he knows that now To face Julia and save his company, he will have to use all his knowledge and skill. Marcelo spends sleepless nights reviewing old documents and strategies, trying to discover a way to reverse the situation. Each new loss for Julia's company is a blow to his pride and a reminder of the choice he made. For the first time, he realizes the void that his material success cannot fill. Gabriela enters the office and finds Marcelo exhausted, his eyes fixed on reports and calculations. He doesn't look up, but he begins to speak, his voice softer and more vulnerable than he's ever shown it. Marcelo speaks in a whisper with a broken voice. "I thought success was what mattered most. That was all I needed." Gabriela, observing him with a certain compassion, says, "Marcelo, maybe it's time for you to resolve this in another way. This is no longer just a business issue. It's about what you lost along the way." Marcelo stares into space, and Gabriela leaves in silence, leaving him immersed in his thoughts. After a long pause, he picks up the phone and hesitantly calls Julia. She answers after a few rings, her voice distant and firm. Julia speaks in a cold voice. "What do you want, Marcelo?" Marcelo, trying to contain his emotion, says, "Julia, I know I hurt you. I know I was selfish, but all this is destroying what we built together. I can see you just to talk." Julia speaks with a determined tone. "Talk? Marcelo, you had every opportunity to talk, but you chose to ignore it. Now there is nothing more to say." Julia hangs up, leaving Marcelo paralyzed, holding the phone. With each passing day, the company's situation worsens. He realizes that to try to save what's left, he needs to not only fight in business, but also face the mistakes of the past. Little by little, his transformation begins to be reflected in his behavior with the team, in the way he handles each decision. Determining that he needs to regain his integrity and respect beyond the corporate world, he begins a careful rapprochement with people who have distanced themselves from him. At each stage, he understands more about the personal losses and the void he left in Julia. Finally, after weeks of frustrated attempts, Marcelo decides to face Julia in person, without letters, without intermediaries. It is a gesture of courage and humility that he never imagined he could do. Marcelo arranges a meeting with Julia in a discreet cafe in the center of Curitiba. When he arrives, he sees that she is already there, sitting and waiting with a firm and contained expression. He walks over to her hesitantly, his hand shaking as he pulls out the chair to sit across from her. The two stare at each other in silence for a moment until Marcelo takes a deep breath and begins to speak in a restrained, almost pleading voice. "Julia, I know that apologizing now may seem useless, but I realize that I lost more than I imagined. Not just the company, but you, our family. I just wanted a chance to say I regret it." Julia speaks coldly, but with a slight hurt in her eyes. "Now do you regret it? When you left me alone, pregnant, it was easy to get rid of us, wasn't it? You never looked back, Marcelo." Marcelo, lowering his gaze, says, "I was blind, Julia. I was so focused on my success that I ignored what really mattered, and I'm paying for it. I don't blame you for what you're doing. Maybe I deserve it all." She remains silent for a few moments, and he continues, visibly moved. Marcelo continues speaking in a choked voice. "I didn't come here to ask you to give up. I just wanted you to know that I realized the value of everything I lost. I realized that without you, without our family, Success means nothing. Julia begins to speak with a mixture of anger and sadness. Marcelo, for years I tried to be part of your life. When I told you about our baby, you turned your back and made it clear that you didn't want us. But you know it gave me strength. While you chased numbers, I fought to build something I could believe in. Marcelo, with a lump in his throat, realizes that her actions are not just revenge. They are the affirmation of a woman who has found her own strength. He looks at her with a sincere and regretful expression. Marcelo begins to speak in a soft voice. Julia, I know that maybe I can't change anything now, but I want to offer you my help, my collaboration. Whatever you need to make it work. I want you and our son to have the best, even if it's far from me. Julia watches him in silence, absorbing every word. For a moment she seems to hesitate, but soon regains her determined stance. Julia speaks with determination. I don't need you to give us what we deserve, Marcelo, but if you're telling the truth and you really want to change, how about proving it? Let's make an agreement, a partnership, only now on equal terms. Marcelo nods with a small smile of relief. For the first time in his life, he feels humble and ready to learn. There, they make a pact. Not a simple business contract, but a chance for redemption and mutual respect. Months after the agreement between Marcelo and Julia, their lives are at a new stage. The business partnership begins to bear fruit. The company that was previously dominated solely by Marcelo now reflects the talent of both. Together, they created an innovative product line that became a success in the market, showing the public a renewed and strengthened brand. Marcelo is in his new office, more modest and shared, looking at an ultrasound photo of his soon-to-be-born son. The pride he now feels is more authentic, mixed with gratitude for having rediscovered a purpose greater than just profit. Julia enters the room to discuss details of a new business proposal. They exchange a complicit look and a discreet smile, with a slight tension that still surrounds them, but with the respect and admiration they have built over time. Julia begins to speak calmly. The proposal is in line with what we discussed, but we will make some adaptations. Oh, and our new client wants us both to be at the meeting. Marcelo, smiling with a tone of respect, says, "Of course, partnership, equal rights, I'm ready." This is a new version of Marcelo, a man who learned the value of humility and teamwork. He is no longer the cold and isolated CEO, but a partner who shares his responsibilities. Marcelo is now waiting nervously in the hospital waiting room. When the doctor appears with the news, he runs to the room where Julia, exhausted, holds a small baby in her arms. He approaches slowly, excited, and Julia smiles tenderly for the first time, handing her son to him. Marcelo, speaking in an emotional voice, looking at the baby, "Our son, he is perfect. He is beautiful." Julia's eyes fill with tears as she watches Marcelo holding his son with care and affection, a new man before her. Julia speaks in a soft and hopeful voice. Maybe what we needed, Marcelo, was to understand what really matters in our lives. Looking at Julia and her son, Marcelo knows that he has finally found the true value of life, and that now everything he will achieve will be to build a solid legacy full of purpose. 2 years have passed since the birth of Lucas, the son of Marcelo and Julia. Their joint company is now one of the most respected in the technology sector in Brazil, recognized for both the innovation and the vision of social impact that Julia has implemented since the beginning. Marcelo and Julia found a balance, not just in business, but in a relationship of respect and mutual support. Marcelo enters the meeting room where Julia is presenting the new project to a team of investors. He watches in silence as she speaks with passion and conviction, proud to see the transformation they have both experienced. A very impressed investor begins to speak. Congratulations, Julia and Marcelo. Your company is an example of how vision and purpose can go together. Marcelo and Julia exchange a complicit look. She smiles at him, and they both know that the path they have taken, full of mistakes, learning and reconciliation, has led them to this moment. Now Julia and Marcelo are playing with Lucas, who runs happily through the Jardim Botanico Park in Curitiba. Julia watches Marcelo with his son, seeing that their relationship is getting stronger. Marcelo now dedicates himself to both his family and business, and Lucas happily admires his father. Julia, with a tender look at Marcelo, says, "Who would have thought we would be here like this?" Marcelo, smiling sincerely, says, "The truth is that for a long time, I didn't even know what real happiness was until you. Thank you for giving me a second chance." They look at each other with a mix of affection and complicity. The past, full of pain and mistakes, becomes a distant memory, while they now live with purpose and a new perspective. Alongside Julia and Lucas, Marcelo feels that his life is finally complete. It's clear that Marcelo found true and lasting redemption, reconciled with Julia, and focused on leaving a significant legacy for his son and the company they built together. In this story of ups and downs, Marcelo and Julia show that even in the most difficult situations, the value of love and redemption can transform lives. Marcelo abandoned his family in the name of success, but by facing his own pride and making different choices, he regained the respect of his partner and rediscovered the true essence of being an ethical father and businessman. Sometimes the biggest rival we face is a reflection of our own choices. What would you do to take back what really matters in your life? Leave it here in the comments. We really want to know your opinion. It is very important to us. If you like this story of reconciliation and overcoming, like, share and leave in the comments what touched you most. Forgiveness and change are possible for all of us. Subscribe to the Kollobe Inspired Stories channel for more exciting stories like this. Thank you for following us until this moment. We'll see you in the next video. Until then.